AITA for refusing to fund my sister's future after she ignored me in the hospital? My name is Jessica, and I had just spent more than an hour reviewing mortgage options, down payments, closing costs, and the appraisal of a used two-bedroom apartment in North Phoenix. It was nothing luxurious. It was an interior unit without great finishes, but it was well kept, and for the first time it actually fell within the range I could hope to finance. The appointment had gone well. I left there with that quiet excitement that comes from thinking that after years of hard work, something is finally starting to fall into place. I remember pulling out of the parking lot, wanting to merge onto Bell Road before the afternoon traffic got heavier. The sun hit me right in the face. I had to lower the visor a bit to see better. That is probably why I barely managed to notice the other car out of the corner of my eye before everything went wrong. The collision was severe. The sound of metal crunching against metal shook me to the core. The other vehicle struck me with such force that my car slid across the pavement and spun out of control. Everything started spinning wildly. Then came another impact, sharper and more jarring. I later learned it was against a utility pole. After that, my memories are fragmented and unclear. I was trapped inside the damaged vehicle. There was a strange acrid smell of burnt rubber and fuel in the air. I could hear voices outside, many voices, but they sounded far away. I tried to respond, but I do not even know if any sound came out. Through my blurry vision, I managed to see flashing red and blue lights, and that only made my headache worse. The next clear image I have is of firefighters working to free me from the wreckage. The sound of the rescue tools was startling, but I was too disoriented to feel scared. They kept talking to me, asking me not to close my eyes, to breathe, to stay with them. I do not remember their exact words, but I remember the firm, urgent, human tone. When they finally got me out, everything became a whirlwind. They moved me to a stretcher. The paramedics were asking me questions, shining lights in my eyes, moving fast. I should have understood right then how serious it all was. "You need emergency surgery," one of them told me as they were putting me into the ambulance. "Is there anyone we should notify?" "My phone," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange. "My parents are in my contacts, Mom and Dad." The last thing I remember before blacking out was the white hospital ceiling passing over me, an endless row of cold lights, and a person in scrubs telling me they were going to put me to sleep. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the emptiness. It was just me, the constant beeping of the monitors, and the white walls of the room. My throat was dry and a dull ache ran through my entire body. A heavy, deep pain that not even the painkillers could completely erase. I tried to move and regretted it instantly. Everything hurt. I let out a groan without meaning to. A few seconds later, a nurse walked in holding a clipboard. "It is good you are awake," she told me while checking my vitals. "How do you feel?" "Like I got run over by a semi-truck," I muttered with a raspy voice. She smiled tiredly, the way someone smiles when they have heard that phrase many times. "You were asleep for about 12 hours. The surgery went well." She adjusted something on the floor and I looked around. The room was still empty. Then I asked the only thing that truly mattered to me. Did my parents come while I was asleep? They must have been notified. The nurse stood still for a second. It was barely a change in her face, a slight discomfort, as if she already knew I was not going to like the answer. She looked down at my chart before speaking. "Yes, we were able to reach your mom. We informed her of the accident and your condition, but she said they could not come." She took a brief, awkward pause. "She mentioned something about your sister's high school graduation. I am sorry. If you want, we can try calling someone else." "No," I said, leaning back against the pillow again. "There is no need." It was exactly what I expected. Many people would think it is an outrage for parents to choose one daughter's high school graduation over going to see the other who had just come out of emergency surgery. But I knew exactly who my parents were. For me, it was no surprise. It was just another chapter in the same old story. I was the firstborn. My mom had a complicated delivery with me, one of those that almost put her at serious risk. For years, according to what the doctors told them, it was highly unlikely she could get pregnant again. For 7 years I was an only child. Looking at it from afar, you would think that made me the spoiled one. That was not the case. I understand now that I was never enough for them, not even back then. And then the miracle arrived. Against all odds, my mom got pregnant again and Ashley was born, Healthy, beautiful, perfect. And from that moment on everything changed. Well, it was not exactly that everything changed. Rather, it became impossible not to notice something that was already there. Ashley became the miracle child. The second chance, the special girl. Every wish of hers was fulfilled. Every whim found a way to become reality. New clothes, trendy toys, classes, gifts, attention, the best of everything, always. I learned to settle for what was left, with sale rack clothes, with things that were still good enough, with the silent message that I should not ask for too much. The difference was especially noticeable on birthdays. I will never forget my 13th birthday. I had been asking for a good quality set of colored pencils for drawing for months. They gave it to me. It was a modest gift, but I was thrilled. I had not even finished saying thank you when my parents brought out another much larger package for Ashley. A very expensive dollhouse. So she does not feel left out, my mom said. Ashley, at barely 6 years old, looked at me with a triumphant smile from the other side of the table. That was the pattern throughout my entire childhood. Every celebration of mine had to include something for her, and hers was almost always better. If she was not given anything, she would throw a tantrum, cry, scream, and say it was unfair that I received gifts and she did not. Instead of teaching her to be happy for others, my parents solved the problem in the most convenient way for them, making sure Ashley always came out winning. By the time I reached high school, I had already learned two things. First, that I could not count on my parents for anything important. Second, that if I wanted to get ahead, the only way out was through my own effort. My parents never said it straight to my face, but they did not have to. The money was being saved for Ashley's future, so I threw myself entirely into whatever could help me pave my own way. While others went to the movies, the mall, or parties, I stayed longer at school building a record that would get me out of that house. I studied as if my life depended on it, because in a way it did. Advanced placement classes, honor roll, academic competitions, workshops, projects. Wherever there was something that could get me closer to a scholarship, I was there. Jessica, would you be interested in starting a school newspaper? Ms. Williams, my Spanish teacher, asked me one day. After class, we need someone organized, consistent, who takes it seriously. I did not just start it. I turned it into something the school had never had before. We stopped publishing just announcements and festival photos. We started covering real issues, transportation problems affecting the students, lack of supplies, cultural activities, interviews, contests, and even news about what was happening around the school community. When the administration saw what we were doing, they proposed another project to me. An audiovisual space for the campus for informational segments and the morning announcements. We set to work recording, editing, coordinating teams, covering events, and proposing short reports. The teachers would not stop speaking highly of me. The principal ended up writing me a college recommendation letter, in which he described me as one of the most outstanding students who had ever passed through the school. At my house, none of that mattered. My parents barely looked up from Ashley and her soccer participation trophy, or her B in math. The only person who seemed to notice my achievements was Ashley herself, and not exactly with pride. How annoying! I heard her complain to my mom one day. At school, everyone calls me Jessica's sister, as if I were nobody on my own. Instead of explaining to her that she could also earn her place through hard work, my mom hugged her and said, "Do not worry, my love. You are special in your own way." All that work at least did serve a purpose. When the college admission results started coming in, I had options, real options, but the best one was a merit scholarship at a public university a few hours away with a living stipend and a room in a student dorm. It was my way out. When I told my parents, they barely reacted. They were too busy helping Ashley with a middle school project. I left that fall. She was just starting middle school, and I left with the feeling that I was breathing for the first time. I got a part-time job at a coffee shop on campus to cover my personal expenses. I dove fully into my studies and started building a life for myself where I was no longer the least loved daughter. My parents called me from time to time, but the conversations were always the same. About how Ashley had made the honor roll, how Ashley was going to dance in a festival, how Ashley had been chosen as class representative. They never asked how my classes were going, if I was eating well, if I needed anything. Nothing. After 4 years of making my life away from them, I made probably my biggest mistake. I went back. I think a part of me still hoped things would be different now that I had a degree. They were not. From the moment I walked through the front door with my boxes, my parents made me feel like an awkward guest. My mom would drop comments at breakfast about young adults who do not know how to become independent. My dad would leave rental ads on the kitchen counter as if it were a coincidence. Ashley, who was already 15 and enthusiastically assuming her role as the family princess, was the most direct. "Are you really going to stay here?" she said to me one morning, looking at me from the table. How embarrassing. None of my friends have their older sister living at home. I could have told her that most parents do help their children during the transition after finishing college, but there was no point. Arguing had never worked in that house, so I started looking for a job as if my escape depended on it, because it did. I sent out more than 100 applications in the first month. I finally got a position as a project coordinator at a tech company in Tempe. The salary was not huge, but it was enough to start saving. I worked overtime, ate quickly at my desk, watched every expense, and saved everything I could. 2 months later, I had enough for the deposit and first month's rent for a small studio in Phoenix. The day I moved out, my mom almost seemed relieved. "Do not forget to return the key," was the only thing she told me as I took out my last box. That apartment was tiny, but to me it was a paradise. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was mine. No one making venomous comments, no one comparing me to anyone else, no one treating me as if I were in the way in my own home. I poured all my energy into work. Every project, every task, no matter how small, I took seriously. If someone had to stay late, I volunteered. If there was a difficult client, I handled them. If a tough problem arose, I sat down to solve it. Little by little, people started noticing. A year and a half after joining, my supervisor called me into her office. I thought I had done something wrong. Instead, she offered me a promotion and a raise. That allowed me to start truly saving. Another year later, I was promoted again. Now in charge of larger projects and with a better salary, I was proud of myself, and then I made another mistake. I mentioned it at one of those family dinners that I still went to occasionally, more out of habit than anything else, trying to maintain a bond that had actually been broken for years. Suddenly, my parents showed more interest in my life than they had in a long time. "That must pay well now," my dad said, feigning casualness. "How much was your raise?" Before I could dodge the question, Ashley looked me up and down and burst out laughing. "Well, hopefully it is enough for you to buy new clothes. You dress like an old lady." My parents laughed along with her as if she had just said the funniest thing in the world. I did not say anything. I grabbed my purse and left. Let them laugh all they wanted. I had a goal: to keep saving for the down payment and closing costs on my apartment. The 5 weeks that followed in the hospital were a single blur of pain, medication, and exhaustion. I had 2 surgeries, one to address internal injuries and another to repair my broken leg. The doctor told me several times that I was incredibly lucky to still be alive. My room looked like a flower shop. My boss Brian sent a huge arrangement with a note telling me that my job was safe and to focus on recovering. My coworkers sent me books, magazines, snacks, things to make the hours more bearable. Even school friends I had not seen in years called to check on me. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from distant relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Aunt Carol called me every night to ask how I was doing. My cousin Justin offered to help me once I was discharged. Even Megan, my college roommate, wrote to me as soon as she saw the news about the accident on social media. But from my parents, nothing. From Ashley, nothing. Not a single call, not a message, not a "we hope you are doing well." The void their absence left weighed heavier than all the messages that did come in. And then a week after the second surgery, they showed up. I was half asleep when I heard the door open. For a second, I felt something akin to hope. I thought that maybe in the end the accident had served to make them realize. "It is good you are awake," my mom said in that dry tone she always used when she was going to ask for something. My dad stayed near the door. She walked up to my bed without asking how I was, without saying she had been worried, without even looking at me the way you look at a daughter in a hospital bed. "We need to talk about something important," she said. I looked at her in silence. "Ashley's results have arrived. She got accepted into several good private colleges, but we need money for enrollment, the first tuition payment, and all the startup costs. We know you have been saving to buy your apartment." It took me a few seconds to process what I was hearing. They had really come to see me after ignoring me for weeks to ask me for money. We expect you to help your sister, my mom said firmly, as if she were saying something completely reasonable. Family supports each other, and Ashley needs that money to study. I stared at her in disbelief. Even with the painkillers in my system, it seemed entirely absurd. Are you serious? I finally asked. I am still in here recovering from 2 surgeries, and you did not even ask how I am doing. But you do come to ask for my savings. Do not be dramatic, she replied, waving her hand in annoyance. We knew you were being taken care of. The hospital kept us informed. Ashley has a real opportunity. She cannot lose it. Those colleges will not wait for her, my dad added from the back, as if that resolved anything. Something inside me broke in that instant. Or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe something finally fell into place. I do not know if it was the medication, the exhaustion, or 25 years of putting up with it, but suddenly I no longer felt like staying quiet. Get out, I said. What? I said get out. My voice sounded firmer the second time. My whole life you made it clear that Ashley mattered more than me. On every birthday, for every achievement, at every important moment. Everything was for her. I got through my studies on my own while you saved money for her future. I built my career without anyone's help while you applauded anything she did. And now, I barely raised a hand pointing at the bed, the wires, the monitors. I almost lost my life in an accident, and you did not show up until you wanted something from me. Jessica, my dad said, finally taking a step forward. You are exaggerating. Exaggerating. I laughed and my ribs hurt. Exaggerating because I wanted my parents to worry if I almost lost my life. Exaggerating because I want to keep the money I earned and that I am going to need for my recovery, for my expenses, and for my life. No, not this time. I am not giving you a single dime for Ashley's college. My mom's face hardened instantly. After everything we have done for you, what did you do for me? I interrupted her. Tell me one single thing, just one. Something you did for me that did not end up revolving around Ashley too. The silence that followed was heavy. They stood there opening and closing their mouths without answering, as if they had never imagined I would dare to throw that question in their faces. You are going to regret this, my mom finally said, ice cold. She grabbed my dad by the arm and pulled him toward the door. They did not say goodbye, they did not look back, nothing. They just left and let the door shut with a slam that made my head vibrate. An hour later my phone started buzzing, message after message from Ashley. How dare you not help me? Just because things went a certain way for you does not mean you should try to ruin me. You are selfish. You do not need an apartment that badly. Mom and Dad are right. You always make everything about you. I stared at the screen for a long time with trembling hands. My younger sister, the miracle child, the girl everyone had protected, spoiled, and made excuses for, wishing me dead for money. For a second I thought about deleting the message, pretending it had never existed, but something stopped me. Instead I took a screenshot and saved it to my cloud. 5 weeks later going back to my apartment was like breathing again. Everything hurt and I needed help even to climb the stairs. The doctors left me a very long list of exercises, appointments, and physical therapy, but at least I was home. The first thing I did was call Brian, my boss. Even though he and my coworkers had repeatedly told me everything was under control, I was still worried about work. Jessica, he said as soon as he answered. You are home. How are you feeling? I am home, but I am still doing pretty bad, I admitted. The doctors say I need at least another month before even thinking about coming back. Honestly, I am sorry for the trouble. Do not even mention it, he interrupted me. Your health comes first. Focus on recovering. Your place here is waiting for you whenever you are ready. I hung up feeling a little calmer. I was starting to think that maybe things could finally settle down. And then my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. My mom had posted something and even tagged me. I felt my stomach drop as I opened the post. As a mother, it breaks my soul to see so much selfishness in my own daughter. After everything we have done for Jessica, she refuses to help her sister study. Ashley got accepted into several prestigious private colleges, and now she might lose that opportunity because her own sister prefers to cling to her money. How can someone be so cruel to their family? Ashley's dreams are being destroyed out of pure spite. The comments started rolling in almost immediately. I cannot believe it. Family comes first. What kind of sister does that? What a disappointment. I saw relatives and acquaintances, people who had watched me grow up, sharing their opinions about me without having a clue about anything. My Aunt Barbara called me ungrateful. Karen, my mom's friend, wrote that she was very disappointed in me. My hands were shaking when I clicked the option to reply, but my head was clearer than ever. I am going to add some context because what is being told here is incomplete. 5 weeks ago, I was in a car accident that almost cost me my life. I underwent 2 major surgeries and spent 5 weeks in the hospital. During all that time, my parents came to see me only once. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to keep me company, not to see if I needed anything. They went to demand my savings to pay for Ashley's college. To those asking why I refused, the answer is simple. I need that money for my recovery, my expenses, and my life. But even if I did not need it, I earned every single penny myself. I put myself through college without my parents' support. Back then they were also saving money for Ashley. And for those who think I am being cruel to my sister, I am going to share what she wrote to me while I was still in the hospital. I uploaded the screenshot. You should have died in that accident. That way at least your money would have been useful for something real, for my college. So to everyone who is judging me, I ask you a question. Would you hand over your savings to people who were not even capable of visiting you in the hospital, to a sister who wished you were dead, to parents who always made it clear that you were worth less than their other daughter? The silence that followed was almost physical. Several minutes passed without anyone commenting. Then new messages started appearing. I did not know any of this, Jessica. I am so sorry. I cannot believe Ashley wrote that to you. The tide turned the other way, but I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel triumph. Just a deep exhaustion, an old exhaustion. It is incredible how much life can change in 2 months. Physical therapy did its job. I am walking much better now, though my leg still hurts when the weather changes or if I overdo it. The scars are healing well, and last week I was finally able to go back to the office. At half pace first, being very careful. The car insurance covered the total loss, and with that I was able to buy another safer vehicle. The first time I drove again, my hands were sweating on the steering wheel, but with every trip it goes away a little more. On the medical side, between the company's health coverage and the policy I had purchased a couple of years prior, my expenses were covered. Every time I think about that, I thank the version of myself that decided to protect herself even if she thought she would never need it. Yesterday I signed the purchase agreement for the apartment. It was not exactly the same one I went to see that afternoon, but a very similar one. Used, simple, and in the same area. The down payment is ready, and next week I go to the bank to close on the mortgage. Aunt Carol called me a few days ago to keep me in the loop. According to her, my parents had to take out a large loan to cover Ashley's enrollment, first tuition payment, and other expenses. They are not happy at all about the interest rates, but they had promised her for years that she would go to whatever college she wanted. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, finding that out would have hurt me. It would have made me feel guilty. I would have started wondering if I should help, if maybe I was being too harsh. But now I feel nothing. No guilt, no relief, no anger, nothing. I deleted my parents' numbers. I blocked Ashley on all my social media. I changed my personal email. Some might say I am running away. I do not see it that way. I am not running away from anything. I am finally walking toward the life I built by myself. The movers are coming next month. I already started packing up the apartment I rent, separating what I am taking with me from what I am donating. Last night, while going through an old box, I found a picture from my high school graduation. I am alone in my cap and gown, smiling at the camera. My parents are not in the picture. That day, they preferred to go to one of Ashley's elementary school dance performances. I packed the picture with the things I am taking with me, not out of nostalgia, not because I still expect anything from them. I kept it to remember who that girl smiling in the photo was. That young woman who even back then was learning to get ahead on her own without anyone's help. That girl did not need her parents' support to make it, and the woman she became does not either. I did not inherit a peaceful home. I built it for myself through hard work, distance, and silence. And in the end, I understood that you also get to decide which door to close, who to leave behind, and what kind of life you are actually willing to defend. That is what I did. I want to tell you all something that took me many years to understand. Sometimes you are born wanting to earn your own family's love with patience effort, and silence, as if one day they will finally see you fairly. And I lived a long time waiting for that moment. After everything that happened, I understood that you do not beg for affection, that setting boundaries does not make me harsh, and that protecting what I built with my hard work is also a way of respecting myself. I realized that you can feel lonely and still start picking yourself up, that the deepest wound does not always come from the worst accident but from realizing who is actually there and who only shows up when they need something. I also understood that letting go is not always an act of anger. Sometimes it is an act of peace. And that closing a door does not mean living with resentment but rather to stop living waiting for what never came. Comment. I often reflect on how much quiet strength it takes to choose ourselves when family dynamics feel one-sided. You deserve relationships that truly see and value you every single day. Setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's simply respecting your own worth. True kindness starts with being gentle toward yourself first. Healing begins the moment we stop waiting for others to change and start protecting our peace. Taking responsibility for our own happiness is one of the most empowering steps we can take. I hope this makes you pause and think about the kind of connections you want in your life. You already have everything inside you to build a calmer, more respectful future. Choosing peace over resentment is a quiet, powerful form of courage. Drop a comment below and share what this story meant to you today. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.